Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. 12 acres, one toxic lake, and a war no one saw coming. When Michael Harrison inherits his grandfather's land, he expects peace. Instead, he finds trespassers, fake reports, and a suburban queen named Karen who's willing to burn it all down for a view. Nature isn't the only thing that turns rotten. 12 acres, an old dock, and a lake that sometimes hissed like it was alive. That was my inheritance. My name's Michael Harrison, and I live alone on a property my grandfather bought just before he shipped off to the Pacific in 1942. The house is modest, the trees are old, and the lake at the heart of it all is as unpredictable as an Appalachian storm. Officially, it's called Deer Hollow Lake, but no one calls it that anymore. Locals call it the Sulphur Bowl, and not because the name sounds romantic. The lake stinks. Not always, not everywhere, but when the temperature swings just right, or after a good thunderstorm, the whole shoreline reeks like boiled eggs and regret. That's hydrogen sulfide for you. It's not just the smell. The water's thick with reeds. Algae blooms choke the edges every summer, and after heavy rains, the runoff from upstream pulls in God knows what. The Georgia Department of Natural Resources tested it last year. I still have the report tacked to the inside of my kitchen cabinet. Unsuitable for recreational swimming. Prolonged exposure may pose dermatological or respiratory risk. Limited use recommended. Catch and release fishing only. That's as polite as they could be. I don't swim in it. Hell, my dog won't even go near the edge. But for me, the lake isn't for swimming. It's memory. It's family. It's my grandfather's old fishing pole still hanging in the shed. It's where we scattered my dad's ashes. That dock, warped and sun-bleached, was built by my uncle back in the 60s. I've spent countless mornings just sitting there with coffee and a line in the water, pulling out more trash than trout. But it's mine. Every inch of shoreline, every angry frog, every gust of wind that rattles the reeds. Legally, on paper, recorded in Fulton County, and filed under my name. That's why I posted the signs. 6 of them, in fact. Thick red letters on white aluminum plates. Private property, no swimming, video surveillance in use. I installed trail cams too. Weatherproof, motion sensitive, with night vision. I even mounted one on the dock in a little birdhouse-looking box. Not because I expected trouble, just because these days people don't read signs. They film them, then ignore them. Everything stayed quiet for a while. Sure, now and then I'd see a boat drifting too close from the south. Usually kids with fishing rods and gas station beer. I'd wave them off and they'd leave. No drama. But a few months ago, I noticed something different. New cars parked along the ridge to the north, just past the tree line. SUVs mostly. A few golf carts, designer coolers, laughter, voices too loud for the woods. I figured someone had built new cabins nearby. I don't keep up with development. But when I hiked out that way to check the old fence line, I saw it. A glossy black and gold sign reading Foxwood Lakeside. Gated community, high fences, and little solar-powered bollard lights. It looked like a damn resort. Turns out, a developer had bought the land just over the ridge and slapped up a cluster of luxury homes, all facing the lake. Well, facing my lake. They didn't have a single inch of shoreline, not legally, but they had the view, and apparently, they thought that was enough. First time I saw them near the water, it was a Saturday, bright and warm for early spring. I was trimming some brush when I noticed voices, not on the ridge, but near the lake. I walked down the west trail and saw them. Half a dozen strangers lounging near the waterline just a few yards from my dock. 2 teenagers in swimsuits were dangling their legs off the edge. A guy in cargo shorts was setting up a Bluetooth speaker. And a woman, mid-50s, bleached blonde bob, huge sunglasses, was arranging a charcuterie board on a picnic table she absolutely did not bring in through my gate. I called out trying to keep it civil. Afternoon, folks. You might not realize it, but this is private property. This lake's not open for swimming. The woman didn't even flinch. She looked at me like I was a park ranger interrupting her meditation. This is a natural resource, she said, without turning her head. You can't claim a lake. That's not how America works. Ma'am, I said, stepping closer, I'm not claiming it. I own it. It's all filed. This isn't public land. She finally looked at me, lowering her sunglasses just enough to hit me with the full intensity of suburban defiance. I'm Karen Dorsey, she said, president of the Foxwood Lakeside Homeowners Association, and I think you'll find that lakeside access is implied for our residents. It's in the brochures. "The brochures are wrong," she scoffed. "You can't gatekeep nature. You're standing in front of 3 signs that say otherwise." A few of her guests were filming now. One of the teenagers made a fake ooh sound, like I was about to get owned. Karen smiled like she was already halfway through a courtroom victory speech. "This isn't over, Mr. Harrison," she said. "You can't bully people off shared land. I'll be contacting the county." And with that, she turned her back to me as if I didn't exist and called out, "Everyone, let's relocate to the South Bank. I've been told the lighting is better there." They left eventually. I didn't follow. I just stood there, watching footprints crush the moss near the waterline, watching the crumbs from their crackers scatter on my dock, watching a new kind of rot take root, not from algae or runoff, but from entitlement. I didn't call the cops. Not yet. But I went inside, pulled up the deed file, scanned the legal boundaries, and printed 3 new copies. Then I poured a bourbon, opened the folder, and reread the part that mattered. Ownership includes full riparian rights, exclusive access to shoreline and surface, subject to conservation restrictions. Not for public recreational use. I had the law, I had the land, but something told me Karen Dorsey didn't give a damn about either. The following Saturday, I woke up to the distant thump of bass echoing through the trees. It was barely 9 in the morning. I stood on my porch in a t-shirt and flannel boxers, steaming coffee in hand, listening. It wasn't just music. I heard children squealing, a woman shouting something about mimosas, and the unmistakable plastic snap of a folding table being popped open. By the time I threw on jeans and boots and made my way down the western trail toward the lake, I could already see it. There were maybe 20 people on my shoreline. Kids darted along the water's edge. A couple of dads were cracking beers under a pop-up canopy. Some genius had dragged in a floating unicorn raft, inflated and anchored about 10 feet offshore. And right at the center of it all, in a white summer dress, sun hat, and gold sandals, stood Karen Dorsey like the queen of a backyard revolution. She was shouting instructions to someone unloading a propane grill from a pickup truck. I stepped out of the trees just as she turned and saw me. Her face split into a smile so fake it could have been printed on a coupon. "Mr. Harrison, what a delightful morning." "What the hell is this?" I asked, pointing at the mess. "Oh, don't be so dramatic," she said, with that tone people use when they're about to say something very stupid and very confident. "It's just our weekly lakeside family brunch." I sent out invites to the Foxwood Community Facebook group, open to all residents and their guests. "Karen," I said, already regretting using her first name, "this is my land. You're trespassing. Every single one of you." She gave me a theatrical gasp, as if I'd just accused her of poisoning the brunch. "Michael, I think you're confused. This lake is a public resource. It may be on your deed, but it connects to state wetlands. Under Georgia law, surface water is shared. You can't own nature. I absolutely can own this shoreline. I can own access. And I sure as hell own this dock and these trees and that path you just bulldozed through the brambles." She laughed. Actually laughed. "This is America, sir. We have a right to use the natural environment. You're not some baron fencing off a river. This isn't feudal Europe." "You broke my gate," I said, voice flat. "Did your HOA authorize that too?" Her smile tightened. "That gate was obstructing a traditional access route. Several of our residents used that trail for years before you put up fences." "Bullshit," I snapped. "This is a private reserve. You moved in 6 months ago." That got her attention. The smile disappeared completely. "Well, it's not very neighborly to threaten people just trying to enjoy the lake." I pulled out my phone. "Karen, I'm asking one more time. Get everyone off my property. This isn't a debate. This is criminal trespass." She glanced around. The crowd was watching now. Some of the dads had crossed their arms. One lady in a sun hat muttered something to another woman and started filming me on her iPhone. Karen, always aware of optics, stepped forward and spoke louder. "Let's all stay calm. This man doesn't own the lake, no matter what he claims. We're simply using the shoreline peacefully. If he wants to take this to court, he's welcome to. But he can't threaten families with children enjoying a sunny morning." I could feel my ears getting hot. Not from anger, from the absurdity. I turned, walked back to the house, and called the sheriff. The deputy arrived 20 minutes later, a young guy named Carter. He was polite, respectful, took notes. I handed him copies of the deed, the conservation restrictions, the letter from the Department of Natural Resources. He squinted through them like they were written in ancient Greek. "Mr. Harrison, it looks like your property line does include this portion of the shoreline, and your signage is clear, but... I knew that but before it even left his mouth. But this might fall into a gray area, jurisdictionally speaking, he said. If they claim traditional access or shared easement, we might be dealing with a civil issue, not criminal. Traditional access. This land's been fenced and posted since the 80s. There's no trail. They tore the gate off the hinge. He gave me a sympathetic look. I'm just trying to avoid escalation. If you want them removed by force, we can call in more units, but you'd probably be better off filing a formal complaint with the county. Go through the courts, get a restraining order or something. And in the meantime, document everything. Photos, videos. Keep it peaceful. I nodded stiffly. Of course. Deputy Carter wandered down the trail to chat with the guests. After a few minutes of cheerful lies and polite nods, the party started to scatter. Some waved at me as they left, as if this was all just a misunderstanding. One woman made a loud show of taking her kids by the hand and saying, "Come on, honey, let's leave before the mean man calls the cops again." Karen was the last to leave. She walked past me slowly, pausing just long enough to lean in and whisper, "We're not done, Michael. You'll be surprised how many people want a piece of your precious lake." I didn't answer. I just watched her sandals crunch the gravel, watched her strut back up the trail like she owned it, like it was hers by right of attitude alone. That night, I rechecked every camera angle, updated the firmware. I printed another dozen signs and bolted them to trees. I installed a new lock on the gate, steel core, double latch, reinforced. I also emailed the Georgia DNR asking for updated water quality reports, because I had a bad feeling this wasn't going to end with brunch. The following week lulled me into a false sense of peace. Monday through Friday, not a soul stepped foot near the water. No music carried through the pines. No SUVs appeared at odd angles near the ridge. Even the frogs seemed calmer, like the ecosystem itself knew the idiots were gone. Then Saturday came, and with it, a heat wave. Hot enough that the sulfur pits beneath the lake woke up angry. The air took on that chemical tang that scratches the back of your throat. You'd think that stench alone would scare normal folks away. But Karen doesn't attract normal folks. I didn't hear them at first. I smelled them, sunscreen, charcoal, bacon. Then two sharp cracks, like something metal being kicked. I dropped the rake and jogged toward the western trail. The gate was on the ground again. This time the hinges weren't broken. They were sawn through. Clean cuts, still warm. My heart rate doubled. As I reached the lake, my stomach dropped. There must have been 30 people, maybe more. Kids in inflatable arm floaties barreled toward the water like it was a Disney resort. A man wrestled an oversized speaker to life, blasting pop music that shook the cattails. Plastic tables formed a makeshift buffet. A woman in a visor poured champagne into red cups and shouted, "Foxwood Lakeside Family Day starts now." And right in the center of the chaos, perched on a collapsible director's chair, like she was filming Karen's Gone Wild, sat Karen Dorsey. Clipboard in hand, a sash across her chest reading Foxlad Ho President in glitter. She spotted me immediately and waved with the confidence of a dictator unveiling her newest statue. "Michael, I'm so glad you could join us. We've decided to make this our regular spot. It's just perfect." A splash cut her off. Two teenagers cannonballed off my dock directly into the worst part of the lake, where algae foams like a science experiment. The water burped up a bubble big enough to gag a horse. I marched forward. "Karen, this lake is unsafe. Did you not smell that? That's hydrogen sulfide. Look it up. Your lungs won't thank you later." "Oh, please," she scoffed, waving toward a laminated flyer taped to a cooler. "We have a lab report that says the water is clean." I leaned in. The report was printed on glossy paper with a fancy blue logo, Sunridge Environmental Labs. It declared water quality certified, suitable for recreation. The signature belonged to Dr. Phil Barton, which sounded to me like a cartoon penguin's dentist. "Where did this come from?" I asked. "From experts," she said, as if the word itself was bulletproof. "Which experts?" "My experts. That's all you need to know." I snatched the flyer. Karen gasped dramatically. "How dare you assault our informational materials?" A little girl screamed, a happy scream, and jumped into the lake with a float shaped like a donut. Her mom cheered. My skin crawled. Karen crossed her arms. "Unless you have a court order, you can't tell us what to do. And if you keep harassing us, we'll sue for interference with community rights." Sheriff Carter already said this is civil. He told us to document you. I felt trapped in a nightmare where logic had taken the day off and sent its resume to Pluto. My voice dropped to a level that even Karen had to take seriously. Get them out. Now. Before someone gets hurt. She leaned back, smug smile returning. No, this lake belongs to all of us. You're just the guy who thinks he owns it. Her guests applauded. Someone yelled, "Yeah, share the water, man." Another shouted, "It's just a lake." A half-drunk dad flexed at me like he was auditioning for Dumbest Bouncer Alive. I walked away. I didn't run. I didn't yell. I didn't yank children out of toxic soup. I just walked the long trail back to my house, called the sheriff again, and prayed they'd send someone who understood what trespassing meant. Deputy Carter returned, alone. His face tightened when he saw the crowd. When he realized the gate had been cut, he actually cursed under his breath. I shoved my phone toward him. "It's on camera. They destroyed property. They're endangering kids. Please do something." He took a long minute, then approached the director of chaos. "Ma'am," he said sternly, "everyone needs to pack up and leave the premises." Karen didn't smile this time. "No." "No?" Carter blinked. "This is shared land. He's lying about the legality, and you don't have jurisdiction to enforce his imaginary rules. You're trespassing on private property," he repeated. "Take your people and go." Her chin lifted. "We'll leave, for now. But this harassment will not stand. We're filing reports, lawsuits, the full 9 yards. It took nearly an hour for the crowd to disperse. Parents herded wet, shivering kids up the muddy path. Beer cans and chip bags littered the ground like a post-apocalyptic picnic. When the last guest was gone, Carter looked at me, tired. "You need a lawyer and maybe a better fence." "Or a minefield," I muttered. He didn't laugh. He just nodded and left. I stood alone with the stink of sulfur and spilled sunscreen thick in the air. The dock was slick with algae. The lake rippled as if pleased with the chaos, or hungry for more. That evening, as the sun bled into the tree line, my phone buzzed. News alert. Breaking. 2 children hospitalized after swimming in private lake. Owner accused of poisoning water. Front and center in the thumbnail, Karen, tears glistening under perfect makeup, saying the words, "He knew it was dangerous. He didn't warn us. Our babies could die." I stared at the screen until it dimmed. Then I whispered to myself, "I did warn you." And I had the signs, and the videos, to prove it. Sunday morning came with silence, and I knew that meant trouble. No birdsong, no insects, just that thick, waiting kind of quiet you hear before a thunderstorm or a court summons. I stood on the porch, still in my boots from the night before, sipping the same coffee I'd reheated 3 times without drinking. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. Not after seeing Karen's crocodile tears broadcast across every local news channel like she was mourning the Exxon Valdez. By noon, my inbox was burning. The messages ranged from confused neighbors to outright threats. One charming gentleman wrote, "You think poisoning kids makes you a man? Wait until the people show up." Another, "Hope your lake chokes you too, you psychopath." The kicker was a forwarded HOA newsletter from Foxwood Lakeside titled "Community Alert, Biological Attack on Shared Lakefront," with an open letter from Karen herself. It read, in part, "We believe a deliberate act of environmental sabotage has been committed by the supposed owner of the lake. Multiple children fell ill after swimming, and we demand a full investigation. This body of water borders our community and cannot be controlled by a single hostile individual." I didn't know whether to laugh or file a restraining order against Microsoft Word, but what pushed me into full war mode wasn't the news. It wasn't the emails. It was the Facebook video. A 5-minute clip uploaded by Karen's friend, an HOA board member named Sheila, showing Karen walking along the lake's edge, pointing dramatically at the signs and saying, "See how threatening they are. Criminal trespass. Surveillance. This is intimidation, pure and simple. The American people deserve access to their lakes." Then came the line that made my jaw lock. "We will not be bullied by a man who poisons water to keep others away." That was it. I called my attorney, Helen Grady, former environmental prosecutor, smart as sin, Southern to the bone, and patient with exactly 0 people who play stupid for power. She answered on the second ring. "Michael, I've seen it. I didn't even say hello. I want to sue." "You will, but first, we prove everything." We got to work immediately. I scanned and emailed her every document I had. the original deed from my grandfather, the conservation restrictions, the official health notices from the Georgia DNR, time-stamped footage from the cameras showing kids swimming under the signs. Every single warning I had posted. Then she dropped her first bomb. "Did you look into that so-called lab report they're waving around?" "Yeah," I said. "Sunridge Environmental Labs, signed by Dr. Phil Barton." Helen chuckled. "I just ran a check. Sunridge doesn't exist. No licensing, no state registration. Barton isn't listed in any medical, biological, or environmental database in Georgia, not even LinkedIn. So it's fake. Oh, it's faker than her tan. And if she's distributing it as part of a marketing campaign, that's fraud. If she altered or obscured your warning signs in promotional material, that's evidence tampering. I nearly choked on my 4th cup of coffee. She did. I saw the HOA flyer. They photoshopped my signs out of the lake photo. Helen's voice sharpened like a razor. Perfect. We subpoena the HOA's marketing files and communication records. If she coordinated this to push home sales, while knowing the water was dangerous, she's looking at criminal charges. And the sick kids? I asked. That complicates things. If a link is proven and she knowingly invited people to swim in hazardous water, that's criminal negligence at the very least. Maybe reckless endangerment. And, depending on the bacteria involved, maybe worse. She didn't have to say the word. Manslaughter. It hung there anyway. I hung up and drove straight to the county health department, marched in like I owned the building, and requested every available water quality report on my lake from the last 5 years. They didn't even blink. Apparently, I wasn't the first person asking that week. An hour later, I walked out with a stack of certified reports, all reading the same. Not suitable for swimming. Meanwhile, the Foxwood Circus kept spinning. They posted a petition online, Free Our Lake, that called for public domain designation of shared waters. The comments were a blend of HOA fury, entitled reasoning, and pure conspiracy fantasy. One gem. This man is a threat to aquatic freedom. Aquatic freedom. Another. No lake should be controlled by one person. This isn't a monarchy. I emailed Helen. We're fighting the Revolutionary War, but in reverse. I'm King George now. Then came a knock at the door. I opened it to find a skinny, nervous man in a UPS uniform holding a thick envelope. "Mr. Harrison, certified mail from the HOA Legal Counsel." I signed and took the envelope. Inside was a formal notice of intent to sue from Foxwood Lakeside for defamation, harassment, and wrongful restriction of shared natural resources. I actually laughed. It was so thin, legally speaking, you could read through it with a flashlight. But Helen would love it. She ate bad lawsuits for breakfast. That night, I got a call from Deputy Carter. "Thought you'd want a heads up," he said. "There's talk in the neighborhood. Karen's planning another community gathering at the lake." "She better not," I said. He sighed. "She claims it's a prayer circle for the healing of the poisoned water." I paused. "You're joking." I wish I was. After the call, I sat on the dock as the sulfur stench rolled in again, heavier than ever. The water didn't bubble. It hissed, like it was just as tired of this crap as I was. Then I opened my laptop and drafted a single email. Subject: Official complaint, HOA fraud and trespass, to County Prosecutor, Georgia Department of Natural Resources, State Environmental Division, and a local news station. Attached: everything. Karen had made her war public, so now I would too. The following Saturday arrived like a bad sequel. Same setting, worse script. I'd been monitoring chatter all week. Emails from HOA members, clippings from their private Facebook group that some brave soul forwarded anonymously, and, of course, Karen's cryptic Instagram stories tagged with things like, "Our healing waters," and "Our lake, too." If nothing else, she was consistent in her delusion. By mid-morning, they began to arrive. Not quietly, not respectfully. SUVs crept along the dirt road that separates my property from the Foxwood easement, like a parade of entitlement. Folding chairs, giant sun hats, Tupperware salads. One woman even brought a portable speaker that started blasting soft gospel music, while someone else rolled out a plastic runner over the grass like they were preparing for a wedding. I didn't see Karen at first. I saw her banner, though. "Water belongs to all of us. Heal, don't hate." Printed across vinyl and nailed to 2 stakes hammered directly into my property line. They didn't even try to hide it. A bold little child in a polo shirt marched up to my private property no trespassing sign and tried to hang a balloon garland over it. I stepped out with my phone recording, already calling Carter's number. Karen finally appeared wearing what I can only describe as evangelical camo. White dress, oversized sunglasses, a sun hat the size of a satellite dish, and a Bible tucked under her arm like a prop. She saw me and offered a fake smile like this was a garden party and I was the confused neighbor who forgot his casserole. "Mr. Harrison," she called out cheerfully, "we're holding a peaceful prayer circle today. I hope you'll respect that." I didn't bother replying, just kept recording. She nodded toward the lake. "We're here to bless the water. After the pain your actions caused, these families are simply trying to find peace." Several families were already sitting in folding chairs arranged in a semicircle facing the lake. Someone lit incense. A man in khakis started strumming an acoustic guitar and humming something vaguely religious. Carter showed up 5 minutes later, lights off, expression unreadable. He parked crooked in my gravel turnout and took his time getting out of the cruiser. "Karen," he said, with the same tired tone I imagine parents use after their kid paints on the walls a second time, "you're not authorized to hold an event here. You're on private property." "We're not holding anything," she chirped. "We're just praying. Quietly. That's protected under the Constitution. Not on land you don't own. Michael?" Carter looked to me. I gestured toward the trespassing signs, the property stakes, the banner, and the Bluetooth speaker still belting out Amazing Grace. "I want them off my land," I said. "Every chair, every toe." Karen folded her arms. "You're calling the police on prayer?" "No, Karen," Carter said flatly. "He's calling the police on you. Again." While Carter tried to negotiate with her like a hostage situation, I walked over to the banner and calmly pulled out the stakes. Karen gasped like I'd kicked a puppy. "That is property damage," she shrieked. "You're destroying a community message." "It's on my property," I said, tossing the banner back over the invisible line like a bag of trash. "Your message doesn't have squat here." Then a new voice joined the scene, one I hadn't heard before. "You the landowner?" He was short, sharp-dressed, mid-40s, business casual, clipboard in hand. I clocked the logo on his shirt. Hall & Windsor Real Estate Group. "Yeah, who the hell are you?" "Mike Lemons, Foxwoods listing agent. Just came to see how bad the tension was getting. Couple buyers were spooked after the news story. We might need to change the lake imagery in the brochure." I laughed. "Oh, you think?" Then he said it. "Karen said you were fine with community access as long as it stayed respectful." That made me pause. "She said what?" "She mentioned some handshake agreement between you and the HOA when the community was first developed." "There was no handshake. There was a letter from my lawyer denying all access. I have the time-stamped reply from the HOA board, signed and acknowledged." He raised his eyebrows. "Then she's—" "Well, okay, that's important. If she's been marketing access falsely, that opens liability." "No kidding," I muttered. "You might want to lawyer up." The man paled and backed away. By then, Carter had started dispersing the crowd. Some left grumbling. One woman filmed herself crying in front of my fence, wailing about how her daughter needed water for closure. Carter warned Karen a second time and said next time would result in trespassing charges. But before she left, she turned to me, pointing like a witch from a bad children's book. "This isn't over," she said. "That water doesn't belong to you alone. You'll see. The people won't let you hoard nature." I didn't answer. I just walked back inside and forwarded the footage of the event to Helen with the subject line, "More fuel for the fire." That evening, I noticed a change. My mailbox had been yanked open, not broken, just forced. No mail inside. The hinges were loose. Someone had been snooping. And along my fence, just beneath one of the no trespassing signs, a red X had been spray painted onto the bark of an old pine tree. Karen had stopped pretending to be civil. We were officially past the prayer stage. The knock came early. Too early for a Saturday. I was mid-coffee, still in a t-shirt and jeans, when the noise rapped against my door like an impatient woodpecker. I opened it to find a woman standing there, panicked, breathless, and clutching a phone like it was her only lifeline. "Are you Michael Harrison?" she blurted. "I'm Denise. My daughter, she swam in the lake 2 days ago during that prayer thing. She's got this rash, fever. We're in the ER right now, and the nurse said it might be from bacteria, from the water." I just stared at her. My gut sank. "She's 10, she added, voice cracking. "The doctors are running tests, but it's bad. Really bad. And your name came up because Karen said you own the lake and that you'd sprayed chemicals in it." My hand curled so tightly around the doorframe, I felt the wood creak. "I've done no such thing," I said. "She wasn't supposed to be swimming there at all. There are signs, cameras, reports." "She said you were trying to keep people off it, to control the view. She said—" I raised a hand to cut her off, not to be rude, to stop myself from yelling. "Ma'am," I said, "I've spent the last 6 months trying to keep people safe from that water. I've got toxicology reports from the state. There are algae blooms that release neurotoxins after rainfall." Karen's the one who's been lying. She blinked, unsure. I could see the gears grinding in her head. Doubt, anger, and now confusion. "Can I get copies of the reports?" she finally asked quietly. "Please." I nodded. "Give me 20 minutes. I handed her the envelope with everything. Printouts from the Department of Natural Resources, photos of the warning signs, timestamps from the last rainfall, and the camera stills showing her daughter wading in with others, while Karen stood smiling nearby. She left shaking. I watched her drive away and knew it was only the beginning. By Monday, I was fielding calls from the Atlanta Courier, a Channel 9 health correspondent, and some environmental blogger from Savannah who claimed to be writing an expose called Poisoned Waters, HOA Lies, and Lake Access Wars. Then came the second hit. A local pediatrician posted a TikTok warning parents to avoid a lake in northern Georgia linked to multiple bacterial infections. He didn't name me, but Karen did, on Facebook, in a tearful video, standing in front of the Foxwood sign, with a tissue and a perfectly timed sniffle. "He knew the water was dangerous," she wept, "and he let children swim there. Why? Because he didn't like us. He's been spraying things. We found a bottle near the water with no label. My son almost died." I stared at the video in stunned silence. She was holding up a rusted container, probably some old fish bait or engine degreaser from a decade ago, and spinning it like it was evidence from a war crime. The comments were a tidal wave of outrage. "Arrest him. Lock him up. Why would a man own a whole lake anyway?" And my favorite, "This is what happens when boomers gatekeep nature. The hell." I called Helen. She was already 2 steps ahead. "They've filed a civil suit," she said, claiming negligence, environmental harm, and emotional trauma. 3 families are signed on. We have 5 days to respond. My heart rate spiked. "They're suing me." "Based on Karen's claims, yes. But don't panic. We're going on the offensive." She outlined the plan. Countersuit for trespassing and defamation, a subpoena for Karen's communications with the HOA, and an urgent filing to introduce the toxicology reports as preemptive evidence. We'd also request a statement from the Department of Health verifying the existing warning on record. "You did document everything, right?" she asked. I laughed. "Helen, I'm ex-Navy. I timestamped the damn breeze." She sighed in relief. "Good. But it's gonna get ugly." And it did. Because 2 days later, a Channel 9 news van parked just outside my gate. I didn't answer the buzzer. They filmed a segment anyway, zoomed in on my security fence, edited in Karen's sobs, and showed blurry shots of children in hospital beds. They never once mentioned the signs, or the reports, or the fact that the lake had been marked hazardous since before most of these people even bought property next door. That night, I caught someone tossing eggs at my mailbox. A different night, I heard movement along the tree line. When I checked the trail cam footage, I saw 3 silhouettes darting past the edge of the lake, one of them carrying what looked like bolt cutters. They were testing the perimeter. Karen had started a war of sympathy, one she was trying to win by emotion, lies, and public pressure. And I was now the villain in her fantasy. But what she didn't know, I wasn't just defending a piece of water. I was defending evidence. Because everything she said, everything she faked, and everything she sold based on those lies, it was going to blow up in her face. 2 weeks into the lawsuit, things took a strange turn. Helen called me one morning, voice sharper than usual. "You're going to want to hear this," she said. "We got discovery access to Karen's communications. And, Michael, it's worse than I thought." She sent over a batch of emails, some between Karen and the HOA board, others with a man posing as a lab consultant from something called Clear Water Analytics. I'd never heard of it. Turns out, no one had. The address led to a UPS box. The phone number went straight to voicemail. And the supposed water safety report, It was full of errors. A fake header, a forged digital seal, and most damning of all, copy-pasted sections from an EPA sample PDF. Sloppy. Karen had submitted this report as part of her case. She'd used it to tell residents the water was clean and to lure new buyers into thinking the lake was their playground. It was fraud, plain and simple. We filed an emergency motion to present the forged report. The judge granted it. When Karen's attorney saw it in court, his face drained. She tried to claim it came from her marketing team, but subpoenaed texts showed she wrote the instructions to fabricate it. The moment landed like a hammer. Whispers spread through the courtroom. The families suing me exchanged glances. Her credibility crumbled in real time. And then came the knockout. The county health inspector, who I'd worked with months ago, testified that Karen had threatened him via email, demanding he retract the lake's hazard classification. He'd forwarded the whole exchange. There was no doubt now. After court, 2 of the parents approached me outside. One apologized. The other asked if the lake would ever be safe for their kids. I told them no, and that's why I'd put up the signs. Karen had tried to rewrite the truth, but this time the paper trail wrote it back. The sentencing hearing wasn't dramatic. No gasps, no shouting. Just a quiet courtroom, the smell of stale coffee, and the sound of a judge reading off the charges like ticking clockwork. Fraud, falsification of environmental reports, endangering public health, trespassing, attempted real estate deception. The list felt endless. Karen stood there in a gray blazer that looked a size too big, her hair pulled back like she was auditioning for sympathy. It didn't work. The judge didn't blink when he handed down the sentence. 14 years. No probation. No chance for community service. Just prison and restitution. The HOA. Dissolved by court order. Its assets liquidated. That community center fund Karen loved boasting about. Seized. The money redirected to the families of the kids who got sick. They'd filed a separate civil suit, which settled fast once the truth came out. And me. I walked out of court that day with my name cleared, and half the courtroom giving me nods of apology. I didn't say much. I didn't feel victorious. Just steady. Back home, I finished the fencing along the shoreline. Thick, solid posts, motion sensors, cameras at every angle. I had a new pier built, raised, and locked. A small plaque on it reads, "Fishing only. Private land." No exceptions. Sometimes people still ask about the lake. They think it's mysterious now. Off limits, like some urban legend. That's fine by me. Every so often, I'll watch the water shift in the wind, the reeds bending like they remember too. The signs stay up, the cameras stay on, Karen's gone, the HOA is gone, but the lesson? That stays with me. People think land is just dirt and water, but out here, boundaries mean something. And when you try to ignore them, well, eventually they push back.